I guess in the big picture, we know what happened in the offseason. They're basically starting another 3-year cycle like they started in 2018. And this, to them, is the year one of a new 3-year cycle. And the players that were no longer on the team, in their minds, their logic would not have helped them in year 2 or year 3 of this cycle. He really felt it coming in the middle of the 2023 season, not last season when it all fell apart. He felt it coming in 2023.
And we've got a special guest joining us now here on the River Islands guest line. It is Tim Kawakami of the SF Standard. Tim, thanks for coming on again. Grandy and Dibs with you. Appreciate the time. How's it been down in Santa Clara to kick off training camp?
Yeah, not too bad. I wasn't down there today. I was there yesterday, of course, and the day before that to the Shanahan Lynch presser, and then talked to Kyle afterwards. The weather's been fine, a little mild, actually not too hot. And, there's some energy there. There's a lot of young players. That's what strikes you in the first thing. There's just a lot of young bodies out there, a few less familiar faces, but then some of the familiar faces are out there too. But more than anything, you see Michael Williams, you see Nick Martin, you see, CJ West, you see all these guys. It's different. There's a different energy to it when you see younger players out there. Obviously, they have to prove themselves, though.
Yeah, they do. And I mentioned your conversation with Kyle Shanahan. It's available again on the TK show. I'm curious what you thought was the most intriguing thing that Kyle told you. If you could just point to a single thing that you heard from him, what would that be?
I guess in the big picture, we know what happened in the offseason. We know all the players that they lost or discarded. And for the first time, Shanahan, and I've been critical of it, and I'll still be critical of some of it, but he really put it together for me. Like, this is what they were looking at. And I've not heard them say this like this. They're basically starting another 3-year cycle like they started in 2018. 2017, he and Lynch take over, and they just got to redo everything. And they didn't really think of their era starting until 18 when they started accumulating some players they really could use, build foundational players. And that launched this run from then till, let's go to the 2023 season when they get the Super Bowl again. And then it kind of busts up again in 2024 last year for various reasons. They kind of do a roster payroll cleanse. And this, to them, is the year one of a new 3-year cycle. And the players that were no longer on the team, in their minds, their logic would not have helped them in year 2 or year 3 of this cycle. And maybe you don't get the Super Bowl this year, but you get a shot at doing it in year 2, year 3. That really made sense to me. And maybe it was logical if you looked at it, but as it was happening, I didn't feel it quite that logical, that structural. And for Shanahan to get it, put it down that clearly, I think he and Lynch kind of figured it out as it goes. I don't think this was exactly the plan to start this offseason, at least to do it as dramatically as they did. Deebo Samuel, Talanoa Hufanga, Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks, and we know the names, Jordan Mason, Bing, 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 all these guys, Deebo Samuel. But I think the philosophy of it, I had not really felt football-wise. And to be sitting across from Shanahan, asking him about it, and him spelling it out, that he really felt it coming in the middle of the 2023 season, not last season when it all fell apart. He felt it coming in 2023. They were still going to try to do it again in 2024 because they didn't have to pay Purdy till this year. But he felt it kind of loosening then. And last year kind of was the disruption year, and this is now year one of a new 3-year cycle, or they're hoping more than 3 years. That was really interesting to me.
And when you look at this 3-year cycle, Tim, and you start to take a look at the draft where 5 guys were drafted on defense, and you bring back Robert Saleh and you bring in Gus Bradley, a couple of veteran defensive minds, do you think that is where Kyle Shanahan is looking to start? You've got an offense that already had some drafted players last year. Is it more about the defense this year that needs to be a part of that 3-year cycle?
Yeah, I think so. That's where the restart really is, defensive line for sure. And we know how much Shanahan and Lynch value the defensive line. One of the reasons they wanted this job was because they had Armstead and Buckner already there. Now you have both as kind of the foundational piece, and you got to figure out who else is around that. And yeah, I do think the refresh, the redo is mostly on defense, and he's very comfortable with Robert Saleh doing it because Saleh did it in 17 and 18 because that was not a great defense, as we know, even with Buckner and Armstead. They had to piece it together. They had to add people who could play that system. Richard Sherman was a big part of it. There were other players who were big parts of it. But, the big redo, where did the team really fall apart last year? It was on the defense. It was a run defense, which is what all defenses pride themselves on, fell apart. They had guys who were not doing the job or they were hurt. And it's just logically on offense, they do have Brock Purdy as a holdover. And, you imagine at 25, 26, he's only getting better. You've just paid him a whole lot of money. You still have Trent Williams. You still have George Kittle. You still have, Christian McCaffrey. So they should be okay on offense, at least with the quarterback for sure, and build it out from there. On defense, you got to redo it. But this has got to happen in camp. Like, this is what they're doing, is figuring out what they got on defense and figuring out where to put it. And I agree. This is the you need the talent there. You can't just do it with stray pieces. You got to do it with the right people, and they have picked the right people. I think they're really talented. I mean, again, it's noticeable. Michael Williams and Alfred Collins, 2 6'5" guys on defensive line, are noticeable. You see them, and other people see them. You kind of congregate over there because there's so much size and so much speed. Can they stay healthy? Can they do it in real games? Can they stop the running back on 3rd and 1? We don't know that, but they got a shot at it with these guys, and I think that's what Shanahan feels.
You mentioned defense, obviously more questions than the offense, but the position group on offense that does have some questions is the wide receiver room. Of course, Aiyuk coming back from his rough knee injury. You got a minor hamstring injury still with Ricky Pearsall. Maybe he comes off and he practices in full coming up on Sunday. But the other question is Jauan Jennings, who is looking for a contract, reworked contract, more money, more incentives, or whatever it is. But he's been out there and practicing, and it's difficult for me to not think back to how this went down last year with Aiyuk, who was a hold-in. How do you think this gets resolved? And is it easier for the Niners to maybe give Jauan what he wants, considering he's at practice and he's actually practicing on the field?
Absolutely. I don't think anybody wanted a replay of the Aiyuk thing. It was just so awkward for everybody. I think Shanahan even made a quick reference to it when we were talking about Purdy, saying, some guys don't even want to listen to a number till after camp starts. And that's kind of Aiyuk. Like, the frustration on some part of the 49ers with Aiyuk was he's making all this noise and he hasn't even given us a number. Like, we don't even know what the number is. That's the 49ers side. I would imagine the Aiyuk side might argue differently, but it was just complete at odds with Aiyuk all the way through camp, all the way to the eve of the season. And we know he did not start off very well after missing all of camp. Jauan Jennings is not doing it. It's a now different situation. He's not a, first receiver. Probably he is right now, just given the absence they've had, but more of a, complimentary, very solid first down maker, kind of a tough guy receiver, which means he's very valuable. But I think him reporting, him practicing, him making plays, him being there with Purdy makes it a lot easier for the 49ers. Like, there's a way to solve this. We know it's not going to be $20 million a year. That's not likely to happen. But they can guarantee him some money next year. They can make this a 3-year deal. They can jump up his salary. It's not that hard when the vibes are good. And Aiyuk got his money last year, right? He got his money. It just happened in a very, very rough way. And I don't think anybody wanted to duplicate that. And I'll just say, if Jennings was holding in right now, I think 49ers might treat this very, very differently than they did with Aiyuk. But they knew he wasn't. They like him. He likes them. This is where he should be. You just got to find a number where it works. It could be like, bump him up to $15 million this year from 7.5. Like that. It isn't. They have the money to do it. He's going to be worth it. And maybe you guarantee him some of that money next year. And I just think there's a way to do this. And I think he is going down that path to proving what they already think of him, that they love him and they want him on this team, and they'll reward him.
And I was thinking the same thing, Tim. Like, I thought that this almost helped his leverage, the fact that he's being a stand-up guy and he's not going about it with a hold-in or a hold-out, and he's out there trying to lead a group that, let's be fair, I mean, this is a very unproven group. And if you look around the wide receiver room right now with Jauan there, who else do you have that you can even count on who might be healthy and ready to go?
It's Marcus Robinson, but who made some plays in day one, but we know he might be suspended. Likely he's going to be suspended for the start of the season. So then you start knocking down. Ricky Pearsall's not practicing yet with a hamstring. Jacob Cowing, had a hamstring pull yesterday, so he'll be out for a while. You really start knocking down the line. It gets to be fourth-round pick Jordan Walkins, who actually looks pretty good out there. We know that Shanahan is tough on rookie receivers. It's hard to tell. Is he going to stay healthy? All the questions we ask everybody, but he might be getting some time out there, guys. He might be their third wideout to start the season. That's pending a Demarcus Robinson suspension, and we don't know where Ricky Pearsall is going to be. But man, if I had to say who might be their first receiver coming off the bench, who isn't starting, it might be Jordan Walkins. Now that is a little scary, I'm sure, for the 49ers again, because he's a rookie. You just don't know if he can do it. But that's how thin they are right now. They signed a receiver, they signed another. They're signing receivers, but I think it's mostly just for camp reps. I don't think they're going to be counting on these guys. But who knows? If another receiver or two goes down, it could get to be. It's already pretty desperate, pending the Demarcus Robinson situation. It could get very, very desperate because you never know who's going to be healthy, who's going to be not. And I'll just say, just the way they're talking, I don't think Brandon Aiyuk is going to be suiting up. Let's just say put pads on for quite some time. I would not expect him to practice in training camp. I would not expect him to be in the preseason games. I would not expect him to be available for at least week 1, 2, 3. I think we're talking October maybe for Aiyuk, and maybe even a little bit beyond that.
Tim, I'm curious, you were talking about how Shanahan walked you through kind of their plan for this offseason and what it means for this year and the opening of a new 3-year window. I think from the outside, there's a lot of opinions that this is a team that is now rebuilding, and maybe this is somewhat of not necessarily a lost year, but a year potentially before a year. What would you say to someone who thinks that this is a rebuilding team right now? The way that I feel, it's pretty difficult to rebuild when you have that big of a contract. You just hand it over to a starting quarterback. What would you say to someone who says this is a rebuilding team right now?
Yeah, in some ways, it's clearly not a total rebuild. As you mentioned, Purdy, Kittle, Trent Williams, McCaffrey, they're Bosa. They've got players who are not rebuilding players, right? They are not. They are middle of their careers, big money, top of the payroll guys. I would say that they retooled, and given this easy schedule. Now, I don't know if the schedule was part of their factoring. I would have gone the other way, saying we got this easy schedule. We can go 15-2. We keep everybody. That's a pathway to the Super Bowl. They did not do that. And by the way, the Super Bowl is at Levi Stadium. I would have thought that might have had something to do. They didn't do it. Okay, I've expressed my opinion on that. But they've got such an easy schedule that even getting rid of all these solid players and possibly risking some very thin position groups, when you're counting on young players who may or may not be good or may not stay healthy, they still might win 11 games, guys. This is a really easy schedule. It's the easiest schedule I've ever seen the 49ers have.